Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really tearing into maybe the biggest music event that isn't the Grammys, right? The Super Bowl halftime show.
Absolutely.
And specifically, we're unpacking just one single event. But wow, it was volcanic, generated conversation everywhere. Bad Bunny's recent appearance.
Yeah, and the sources, they immediately confirmed this wasn't, just another performance. It was labeled instantly historic. I mean, the scale of that platform.
Right. Yep.
But at the same time, it was immediately polarizing. So we're not just looking at the music itself, we're diving into the nuance of why there was this duality, the celebration versus really sharp criticism. Why was it so profound?
Exactly. That's our mission today.
Right.
To understand the layers of significance in that moment. Because it wasn't just a concert, was it? It was like a flashpoint.
Yeah.
For cultural representation, for artistic scrutiny. We've got to explore that global celebration side.
Yeah.
A Latin music icon hitting that absolute pinnacle. But then, right alongside it, you have these very sharp, very specific criticisms about his artistic choices. The message is maybe underlying it all. Yeah, let's actually unpack this.
So what's fascinating here, I think, is really grasping the magnitude of the milestone itself. Before Bad Bunny, that stage, it was almost exclusively reserved for a certain kind of American pop or rock royalty, a specific lineage.
Right, the established names.
Exactly. So his presence representing the current global sound, well, it wasn't just symbolic. The sources show it was quantifiable evidence, like proof of a seismic shift happening in music.
And the numbers, they totally back that up. When you look at the positive side, the reception, Bad Bunny showing up, it marked a really definitive moment, especially, like you said, when you think about the language.
Yes.
Sources highlighted that, for the first time, a major chunk of that performance was almost entirely in Spanish.
That really is the key quantifiable data point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at the fan surveys afterwards, that specific linguistic choice, it was celebrated overwhelmingly by Latin American viewers, by Spanish-speaking viewers in the U.S.
Huge validation.
For them, this was tangible, a real step forward for inclusivity. It wasn't just symbolic talk. It was the actual sound, the actual language of the artist, right there on that massive stage. It was proof.
It basically signaled that Latin music isn't just, allowed on the world stage anymore. It is the world stage.
Yes, yes.
So that performance, it became this focal point.
Yeah.
Showing the progress, in cultural representation, and right at the highest level of mainstream American entertainment.
Right.
It really solidified that global pop culture is diverse now, is defined by it.
And if you connect that to the broader industry picture, the performance itself was a massive win for the genre. I mean, it validated years of commercial success, charting dominance, stuff that maybe until that point hadn't been fully acknowledged by the, let's face it, historically pretty rigid structure of the Super Bowl halftime show.
Yeah, it's always been a bit predictable.
It was this huge cultural endorsement, basically.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because despite that clear historic significance, the commercial validation, the controversy was just as immediate and just as intense.
Right away.
So now we have to dive into the specific things that fueled that criticism.
Yeah.
And it feels like it goes deeper than just, oh, I didn't like the music.
Oh, much deeper. The scrutiny was incredibly intense. And interestingly, it didn't really focus on his talent, per se. It was more about context and content.
Okay.
So the central debate, it really started with the lyrics he chose and the specific messages people felt were being conveyed to such a broad general audience. Critics weren't just saying the lyrics lacked substance.
Which some did say.
Right, some did. But others argued that the tone, the use of specific street slang, it was fundamentally inappropriate for a performance that draws in literally every demographic. Young families watching, corporate sponsors, everyone.
And that immediately creates a kind of demographic clash, doesn't it? Certain parts of that, maybe more traditional family audience, felt alienated just by the language used.
Exactly.
There's one particularly sharp critique we saw, noting that including certain uncensored phrases, even if they were fleeting, it directly contradicted the NFL's own stated family-friendly guidelines.
And that apparently led to a measurable spike in complaints to certain regulatory bodies, like within the first hour after the performance.
Wow. Okay.
So that moves the conversation away from just taste, doesn't it? It moves it towards accountability. And it raises this really important question. When an artist accepts that massive platform, that Super Bowl stage, does their inherent artistic freedom clash with a perceived social responsibility? A responsibility to that widely diverse audience.
That's the big philosophical debate, yeah.
Yeah.
But some sources suggest it wasn't just philosophical. It might have been operational. practical. Well, we looked at several industry journal reports, and they argued the real controversy might have been about whether Bad Bunny and his team fully disclosed the level of uncensored language they plan to use.
Okay. The vetting process.
Right. Like if the expectation from the NFL side was a heavily sanitized version, maybe TG rated, and they delivered something closer to his original, more explicit sound, then the critique isn't just personal taste anymore. It's about, meeting expectations, adherence.
That's the tightrope walk, isn't it? You've got the artist wanting to be true to their sound, authentic to who they are.
Which fans expect.
Exactly. Versus the expectation that a Super Bowl performance is inherently this highly produced, maybe universally palatable corporate entertainment product. And the tension between those two things, well, it fueled weeks of media commentary.
And tied right into that tension was this deeper question about authenticity itself.
Yeah.
The performance brought up questions about, well, not cultural appropriation by him, obviously.
Yeah, no.
But whether the act itself was authentic to his, raw artistic expression, or if it had been tweaked, polished just to cater to a mainstream American audience that maybe doesn't get all the nuances of his genre.
That was the central question posed by fans and critics alike, really. Was he sacrificing some of the edge, the authenticity, for broader appeal? Or was he successfully proving that his authentic art, edges and all, was actually massive enough to command that stage on its own terms?
That's a tough one.
It's a really complex duality. And it's something artists who reach that kind of global crossover scale, they constantly wrestle with it.
Okay, so just to recap the criticism points.
Yeah.
We had the explicit language concerns,
Yeah.
the audience alienation based on demographics, this major debate between artistic freedom and maybe contractual responsibility, and then this deep dive into what even counts as authentic versus commercially acceptable. Wow, that is a heavy, heavy conceptual load for one, 15-minute performance to carry?
It is, and that's precisely why the impact, the ripples from this performance, they extend far beyond just the Super Bowl field. We have to look at the concrete repercussions.
Right.
The event didn't just happen in a vacuum. It opened up a much larger conversation, centered on the sort of operational and ethical role of Latin artists in global pop culture when they reach this unprecedented scale.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The discussion forced audiences, maybe institutions too, to consider representation not just as a simple cultural win.
Right, not just, yay, visibility.
Exactly. But to prompt a deeper look at the actual messages artists convey with that visibility. And the focus shifted to institutional consequences. Like, did the backlash actually change how the NFL vets performers now? Did the intensity of the scrutiny lead to shifts in how sponsors approach future halftime shows?
Well, looking at the data and reports following the event, we did see immediate internal changes. Discussions inside major networks, inside sports organizations about how they vet future, maybe non-traditional performers.
So it had a real effect.
It seems so. His Super Bowl moment, it really serves as an ongoing case study, showcasing that complex intersection of art, culture, and these really high corporate and societal expectations.
And the discussions, they just highlight the immense power of music, don't they? To shape how people perceive things, to influence cultural narratives, especially when that music is beamed into, 100 million households?
Easily.
Bad Bunny's influence now, it pretty much guarantees continued scrutiny, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Every artistic choice he makes probably carries even greater weight now because he's become the focal point for these debates about representation.
It's crucial to understand that the repercussions, they're still unfolding. The scrutiny he faced, and let's be clear, the success he maintained despite that whole experience, will likely inform the strategy of every Latin artist who follows him onto similar mainstream American stages.
Setting a precedent.
It established a new, maybe higher threshold for both visibility and perhaps expected conduct or content.
Which means this conversation is far from over. It's this ongoing analysis of what it means to be a global icon who's also expected to carry the mantle of representing a massive, diverse community, all while navigating the intense pressures of these huge corporate platforms.
Yeah, the performance was undeniably a pivotal cultural moment. It showcased both the incredible progress that's been made,
Which is huge.
and the serious challenges that still remain in achieving true, nuanced representation without, compromising artistic identity.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to make sense of it all? Ultimately, I think the performance ignited this truly global conversation, focused intensely on representation, but also authenticity and artistic responsibility.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering the intense scrutiny Bad Bunny faces, right? Specifically that constant debate, is he staying authentic? Or is he catering to the mainstream? What implications does this whole intersection of art, culture, high expectations, what does that mean for the next Latin artist who achieves that kind of global scale? What's the true cost, perhaps, of that visibility when every single word, every movement gets dissected under this massive magnifying glass of social and corporate responsibility?
That's a really potent question. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring how music shapes our understanding of the world and how culture responds when that spotlight hits its absolute brightest. The answer, well, it's often not simple, but it's always fiercely fascinating.